This is going to be a short video about creating neat output in Python. So it involves working with text operations, writing F strings, and rounding numbers. So the aim is simple, to help your code to speak clearly. So let's get it started. Okay, so let's start with text operations. There are small tools you will use every day. So I will start by a simple text join. I will create two variables. So I want to create the word New York. So I will create two variables. The first part of the word is new. And the second variable, conveniently named second, will hold the second part of the word. So together, if joined, I will end up with the name of the city, so New York. So what I can do is just basically add first and last. But you probably want a space in between, so New York with a space in between. And for that, I will manually add a space. So it's a so it's a quotation mark with a space in between. So if I run this, I will end up with this. So this was of course called second, not last. So this gives me the name of the city, New York, that we can continue working with. Repeating. If for whatever reason you want to repeat New York, let's say you love New York and you want to print the name many times. So if you want to reduce the amount of code you're writing, which is the goal, you don't want to write very long codes if it's not necessary, you can just multiply this string with the number of times that you want to repeat that piece of text. So let's just directly do it in a print function. So I will just use the city and multiply it by 3. So this should give me New York 3 times. The next thing we want to quickly look at is slicing. So we have already defined the variable for our city. It's New York. So now if I want to print the first 3 letters, so we are going to talk about lists in future. So the logic here is kind of similar. So the strings in Python are indexed, and the index starts from 0. So if you want to access the first letter in new, this is at index 0. So you're going to start counting 0, 1, 2. So let's say I want to just get the first 3 letters of my word, which is new. So let's write a print statement. And I can say the first 3 letters are, and this is how you would access the first 3 letters. So I will access everything from 0 up to 3. So it gives me 0, 1, 2. 3 is not inclusive. So this gives me the first 3 letters, which is N, E, and W. You can also start counting from the end. I can print the last 2 letters in the name of my city. And for doing that, I can go from -2 to up. So that gives me R and K. So you start counting from the very end. So this is -1, this is -2. Another thing that can be sometimes useful is to check the content of your strings. So I will already write a print statement, and I want to check if the city, the name of the city New York, includes the letters YO. So Y and O. So I will start by writing YO in New York. So that's just for making the print more meaningful. And this is the part that I actually do the test. So I will test if Yo is actually in city. So if I just run this, it's going to tell me that Yo in New York is true. So you're returning, it's a Boolean value, another data type that you're seeing now. So you're checking something and it's giving you a Boolean value. So it can be either true or false. So if I replace this Y with a smaller letter, I'm going to get false as the output. Because of course it's case sensitive. And yeah, so an example of a Boolean value, and this is how you can use in to check whether something is inside your string or not. Another useful operation in the strings is splitting. So splitting turns one long string into pieces. By default, it splits on spaces, but you can give your own separators. So let's go with a longer string this time. So I will create a variable called sentence. And the sentence is Python is great for geospatial work. So now I'm going to split. So I will split it by spaces. And this is how you do it. So this is my variable sentence.split. I don't pass any argument to the function. We are going to revisit the function topic later on, but so this will by default just split it by spaces. So you end up with a list, which we are going to learn about later, but it has all the items in your word separated or splitted using the space. So wherever there's a space, it's been separated as an element in your output list. So as I mentioned, this is the default behavior if you do not provide any argument, but if you want to control the behavior of how the splitting is done, you can do that. So let's create a string of some city names around the world. So I have Amsterdam, I have Berlin, and I have Helsinki. So we have three city names stored in one string named cities_str. And now I'm going to see how the splitting actually works. So this time I'm going to split by comma. And it's similar to what we did earlier. So I'm going to split cities_str using split method, but this time I pass in an argument. So I will say to Python that you should do the splitting by the comma. So wherever you see a comma, you should do the splitting. So I forgot to put the dots here. Yeah, so split by comma, Amsterdam. So you end up with 3 items because you had 2 commas. So you ended up with 3 items, each of them an item in the list. So another very useful formatting method when working with the strings in Python is writing f strings for very clean formatting. So f strings let you mix variables and text in a simple way, which is a very nice way of controlling what you have in your output, but also it's very often used for different purposes. For example, if you want to name your file, so you're calculating something, you're doing some analysis, and you're producing some output in an automatic way. And imagine it's a loop. You have automated the process, so you're going to end up with many different files, and you want to name them dynamically. So you have different names representing what the file is what you have in the file, but also you don't want to overwrite your file. So this is, for example, one of the ways how you can dynamically adjust the string that can be used for naming your file. So let's create a new variable, and I'm going to call it city name. So I will go with the city Helsinki again. I will create another variable called population. And the population of Helsinki is around 664,000. One thing you can do to make your code more readable is to separate every 3 digits. So in different languages, this is done differently. Like very often you have like comma separators or dot separators to separate every 3 digit when you write numbers to make it more readable. In Python, it is underscore. So if you just put underscore here, Python knows that this is just to make this long number more readable. So it just doesn't interpret it in any other way. So this is a good coding practice if you deal with long numbers. So I'm going to print something, and this is how you print an F string. So you start by F, and then you have the quotation mark. So Python knows that this is an F string. So with what you can with F string is that you can pass in a variable. So in the last lesson, we learned about variables. So if you want to insert that variable inside your string, you can use these curly braces. So we have created a variable called city name. So I will just put it here in my string. So I want to say that the city, which in our case is Helsinki, has about, and I want to put the variable that I have for population. Again, I use curly braces, and after the curly brace, I continue with my string. So Helsinki has about 664,000 people. So this is how F strings work, so you can pass in variables. But another thing you can do, so it doesn't have to be variables, you can also do calculations here. So for example, you could have added population plus 10 for whatever reason, and it would happen. That you can do the calculation straight in the string if that's what you need. Or you could have removed this population altogether and just go with some mathematical operations. So I could have put 600,000 plus 64,000 to come up to the same result. So these are some of the things that you can do. So F strings are very useful, and we're going to use them a lot for different purposes to print out the results, but also for different things such as naming our files in a dynamic way. So with F strings, you can also format decimals using a certain pattern. So this is the pattern that you can use for formatting. So formatting decimals uses a pattern such as this one. So you have a colons, dot, n, and f, where n is the number of decimals that you are going to use, and f is telling Python that this is a float. So let's create a new variable and call it pi_val or pi_value, and we know that with pi you can go with as many decimals as you want. So let's say we have pi calculated up to 6 decimals, but if you want to print this out to your screen, probably this is something you don't want, so it makes it too crowded. So let's say we want to create an F string saying that pi with 2 decimals is. So remember that you can insert a variable. So we have already stored the pi value as a variable, so we can easily access it by putting the name of the variable in a curly brace, in a pair of curly braces. So this is where I do the formatting. So I want to only keep 2 decimals in my float. And you can see that now you have your text printed out, but only with 2 decimals for the pi value. So this is also very handy. You could have applied different numbers of decimals. So if you want to have only 1, you just put 1, and you can try it with different numbers. Yeah, so same with, we can have another, here's another example that feels more geospatial for those of you who are curious about geospatial topic. So let's say we have a coordinate. So we have the longitude with many decimals, so 4 decimals, let's say, so 9375. So this is what we have. And I want to print it with, so let's put 6 decimals, then I will only print it with 4 decimals as the output. So again, I create an F string and I say longitude with 4 decimals. And again, I put my curly braces. This is the variable I'm going to include here. And here I add the formatting. So I will only go with 4 decimals in my float. And this gives me the longitude, but only with 4 decimals, getting rid of the last 2. Okay, so another thing I would like to show you in this video is rounding numbers. Last week we talked about floats, different data types, so float and integer. And we also saw that we can convert a float to an integer, and that would essentially remove the decimals. This could be enough for you, but very often you want to round you want to have more control over rounding. So if you have a number, let's say it's a number 1, you have a number that is something like this, 19.98. So if you convert this to the integer, it just gets rid of the integers, the decimals. So this is not the best way of rounding. So with 19.98, you want to round it to 20, which is the closest whole number, not 19. That's why it's recommended to do a proper rounding instead of just converting to integer. So let's work with the same number. So let's see what happens if I just round my number. So this is how you do the rounding. There's a function called round, and in the function you can pass in the variable storing the number that you want to round. So if I use round, it's going to round it to the closest whole number, which is 20. If you want to keep some of the decimals, so let's say that we have many decimals here, so I will add a few more. So we have 19.9814, and you want to round it to, let's say, 2 decimals, so it doesn't always have to be a whole number. So you can also do that. So I will round my number 1 and keep 2 decimals. So you can round it to a whole number, or if you want to a certain amount of decimals. Okay, so now let's put some of the things that we learned together and write a new f string. So let's imagine that we have 2 coordinates, latitudes and longitudes, like this, with 4 decimals. So what I'm interested in now is printing an f string. And in my f string, I'm going to write the approximate location. So the latitude is, and here I use the curly braces. So I want to round my latitude to 2 decimals. And similarly, I'm going to include longitude. And also with my longitude, I'm going to round it to 2 decimals. Since I'm already rounding this and I will end up with 2 decimals, doesn't make sense to use the formatting. Otherwise, you could have also added the float formatting to control the number of decimals that you will end up with. But of course, rounding is better than just dropping the decimals. So I'm doing this instead. So let's just run this, and you have the approximate location, latitude at 16.17 and longitude 24.94, and you got this from rounding, not just dropping decimals from the end of your number. So that was it. We learned a few things that we are going to use quite a lot. We learned about text operations, writing f strings, and we worked a little bit with rounding and combined these things together to have a bit more neat looking outputs of our Python operations. See you in the next one.